Good evening. Welcome to NDTV Profit. This is The Big Question and I'm Vikram Oza. Now, India's iPhone story has hit a big milestone. It's not just a tech headline, it's actually a macroeconomic one. In November alone, if you look at Apple and its exports, there are exports of $2 billion worth of iPhones from India alone. And that's not a rounding error. That is actually scale. In fact, 3 out of every 4 smartphones that India has exported that particular month were all iPhones. And for the financial year so far, iPhone exports have already crossed $14 billion. So let's just put that number in context. Just a decade ago, India barely featured in global smartphone manufacturing. And today, 1 in every 5 iPhones globally is now made or assembled in India. So India is accounting for 12% of Apple's global production value. It has 5 iPhone assembly plants. It is now assembling even the high-end, the Pro and the Pro Max models, something that Apple had never done outside China earlier. And this kind of surge that we're talking about is happening despite the tariff pressures, the ones especially from the US. Smartphone exports to America, they're up nearly 200% year on year. We're talking about tariff pressure, but look at what's happening over here. And smartphones are now among India's biggest export category. Exports are jumping from about $11 billion. Just 2 years ago, it was $11 billion. Now it's going more than $24 billion. This is that scenario last year, but it's climbing. And here's where the story gets really interesting. Apple is now, we understand from media reports, it's now in early stage talks with Indian semiconductor companies. They are trying to explore assembly and packaging of iPhone chips in India. So this would be Apple's first move beyond just assembling phones and getting into critical components, that part of the value chain that really matters. So if that happens, India moves from being an assembly hub to becoming a deeper, more strategic part of Apple's global supply chain. Actually, it also fits into a much bigger trend. We're talking about global companies. From Apple to Intel, Foxconn, Micron, and Lam Research, they're pouring billions into India's semiconductor ecosystem. So quite clearly, this is not just about more iPhones rolling off factory lines. It goes beyond that. It's about where global manufacturing power is shifting, who controls the supply chains, and whether India is now finally climbing up that value ladder. Because if Apple succeeds in India, now the question is, does it become a blueprint for global manufacturing relocation? Or then, the other side, the flip side, that the question is fair, is Apple the exception and not the rule? Which brings us to the big question tonight. Now that India has developed its iPhone edge in the manufacturing setup, can it materially and effectively? Can we dent China's grip on the global supply chains? It's a good question to ask our panel. And joining us on this discussion and debate this evening, Ashok Chandak. He is president of the India Electronics and Semiconductor Association, the IESA. He's joining us along with Devendra Kumar Pant, the chief economist at India Ratings. Gentlemen, thank you for making the time and joining us. We're also expecting Neil Shah to join us in a bit, and he's, of course, an industry analyst and co-founder of Counterpoint Research. We'll wait for him to join us as well. But coming to you first, Mr. Chandak, from your perspective and where we stand today, you're talking about $2 billion worth of iPhone exports in a single month. This is a big manufacturing boost, as it were, for India, which is, of course, banking a lot on getting our trade numbers right. We need to give an impetus to export. So when you look at a number like this, what is the bearing it has on India's manufacturing prowess?
To me, this milestone is structural. It is not an episode, actually. You know, the big companies, for example, Apple and similar any other mega companies, those are consumer-centric and global brand names. You know, they are very disciplined in terms of their global activities. It doesn't change overnight. And we work very closely with Ministry of Electronics IT. What we have seen is based on the government consolidated number itself, you know, our production of electronics over last, let's say, a decade has grown up 6 times, and these are exact numbers I'm referring here. Exports have gone up 8 times, mobile production 28 times, so forth. So the trend is really positive. And this will going to continue. And this is not just episode I just said, this is also enabled by the multiple policy interventions, those who have been done by the central government and support of the state governments with regards to the electronics manufacturing PLI, the customs clearances, the logistics, the manufacturing clusters, central state coordination, etc.
Sure.
Now that is really helping out. Another thing what we have seen as a further addition to this is, traditionally we used to be just assembling of the phones where when we begin this journey and some other electronic products. Most of the electronic products and phones are now moving towards more value addition. There is a localization which is increasing. That increases not only mechanicals, enclosures, but also the PCBs, charger, logistic services, etc. are moving. This is how exactly China has scaled over time. While we have started only recently, but we are moving in a similar way. But also there are some additional differences which I would like to narrate.
Yes.
However, I just want to conclude here. The first point, what you mentioned, is we are definitely moving towards a mega scale of electronics manufacturing. It's going to increase to about $400 billion. The programs have been made, the central government, state governments, the industry bodies like IESA are fully in line along with the industry partners. And this is most important point.
Yes.
There are several industry members, those are really now catching up their manufacturing capabilities and operational excellence, building those high quality, reliable products, and those would get supported by the localization of the various ecosystem components here.
So, I mean, the trend is positive, and you're saying the ecosystem is building over a period of time, and the pace at which we are growing. You're saying China has taken its time to get there, but India is fast catching up. There was an opportunity, and India is grabbing it. But Neil Shah, do you think that we are relying too much on one brand, on Apple?
Yeah, I think Apple is the poster child. So if you look at Apple is the best company when it comes to the supply chain and building an ecosystem. So if Apple starts building up an ecosystem over here around the EMS factories, which Mr. Chandak referred to, and the manufacturing capabilities, I think it attracts all the other players because Apple has a top-notch supply chain, top-notch suppliers. So if those top-notch suppliers come to the party, I think that is what will set a flywheel effect for all the other ecosystem players to set up shop around the manufacturing units. And right from camera modules to display manufacturers, silicon players, and so forth.
That point that you make, Neil, is well taken. Let's get across the economist view as well. Devendra Kumar Pant is also with us. From your perspective, for the kind of growth in exports that we've seen, and despite the kind of tariffs that US has imposed, we're looking at smartphone exports from India having gone up and has sustained, and not just sustained, but has really gone up in a very significant way. So if you were considering the possibilities over here of exports over the years and how it's going to improve our trade picture, Mr. Pant, where do you see the growth lie now? If it's going towards smartphones and a big chunk is smartphones, is that the way for India to push ahead?
Thanks, Vikram. I'll say it's a good beginning, but I'll not be too happy with just the $2 billion. I'm not saying the volume, because it's a $2 billion export. We import a lot. We import a lot from China, the chips and other things. So one has to look at it in what is our net exports. Obviously, when we are exporting $2 billion worth of Apple iPhones in 1 month, there will be net value addition, there will be the employment, there will be consumption. But if you see with China, our imports are running somewhere closer to $10 billion. And until unless we start having those manufacturing end-to-end supply chain within India, it will be, yes, $2 billion, but net gain to the economy will be less than $2 billion, maybe around $500 million or maybe $600 million. Because other two gents, those who are from the industry, they know much better than me what are the margins in this. But I'll say it's a good beginning. Now, coming to the question, like after tariff, still we are exporting iPhones to the US. Because after the tariff was imposed on India, 25%, and then another 25% fine or penalty, whatever one may say, the Apple was asked that you bring back your production to India, back to US. Otherwise, the US government will levy, I believe, the $25 billion worth of penalty or taxes on the Apple. Now, Apple still continued with manufacturing in India because their profits are much more than the $25 billion what they are paying as a fine or penalty to the US government. So this will continue. Now, it's good that the others have shown their expression, or if I say the expression of interest, EOI, but at the end of the day, it is the kind of infrastructure we provide to them.
Correct.
Yes, the central government approves it, state government approves it. Do we have the good connectivity, road connectivity, port connectivity, power supply, water, other things? What kind of labor issues are there? How do we address? Like it's a look, if when we are asking the other companies from the outside to come in, it will not be win-win for one. It has to be win-win for both.
Yes.
So some of the conditions which India will have, some of those conditions which those firms will have, we have to arrive at a situation, because if in that we take a confrontationist view,
Yes.
like we start confronting each other, then I think somebody else will gain it.
But Mr.
So we
Pant,
have to see, yeah.
Yes. No, but like you said, I mean, despite the penalties, Apple sees value in being in India. Now they're exploring chip assembly and packaging in India, which means they're seeing the possibilities, even though we may not be there infrastructure-wise, like you correctly pointed out. But Mr. Chandak, where are we infrastructure-wise, that these companies, it needs to go beyond Apple as well. How much strategic shift is possible for many companies looking at manufacturing in India compared to the other options that are available to them, even if it was outside China, like a Vietnam?
See, my view is India's roadmap and the strategy formation as well as execution and implementation along with industry partners is a bit different than China and Vietnam actually. Obviously, China has built the dominance for about 25, 30 years. They took a long time, and Vietnam is more of a assembly-centric manufacturing. What we have to look at is the government support that has become really a catalyst and enable. And I call it as a 10 plus 10 plus 10. $10 billion which were committed for the Semicon India program, 10 billion close to that for the PLI, and 10 billion for the electronic components, systems and modules and other stuff. So all these things are helping to offset the large scale disadvantage which we had in past. And that is why now it's becoming much more cost competitive. Not only that, India is becoming not just the assembly point now, but also adding up the technology. How? So I think many of you might be aware, if not, let me add up. The India is right now running on multiple programs actually, which will help us to build our own technologies. So there is a research and development scheme which is running. There is a fabless semiconductor design scheme which is running. There is an assembly test operations and a fabs for semiconductor that is running. All those things, once it adds up, that is going to create a mega value addition in the electronics. Our economists just said that we are importing a lot from China. We don't import semiconductor, by the way, from China. We import only the components, the PCBs and other stuff. All these things are going to get done in India actually. Recent ECMS scheme was highly successful. 22 projects are approved by Ministry of Electronics and IT, and there are some more projects which will get approved. So that is going to create the manufacturing of the PCBs, the displays, the modules, the connectors, the passive components and other stuff. That creates the electron value addition. And once the value addition is done, it becomes much more sustainable manufacturing activity. We don't have to worry then too much on other stuff. So this is where India is progressing. So strategic roadmap is design of the IP in the India, manufacturing of the components and a subsystem locally in India, integrating the advanced packaging and a system. Many semiconductor projects are announced, I already mentioned. Almost $20 billion of semiconductor projects are approved.
Correct.
By the Ministry of Electronics and IT. And those are going to get into production one by one. Many of the projects are already in the prototype or pilot phase. And today, Mr. Krishnan, Secretary of MIT, mentioned that one of the project is going to get into commercial production very soon. So these are moving up actually.
Yes.
And what we are looking at is really this is getting into a very good trajectory for the value addition as well as the manufacturing. I will just take 30 seconds more. So it is not only question of Apple, it is beyond that. And I want to bring again the number. We have done a research which indicates that we can reach almost $400 billion of electronics manufacturing by 2030. And smartphone will be maybe 40% of that only, not more than that, maybe close to that. So remaining is a non-smartphone market actually, which will be addressed as a manufacturing activity, consumption in India as well as export out of India.
So consumption is, of course, one enduring story that India has. But to take it to exports, that's where the action is, and that's what India is counting on. So Neil Shah, when you look at the competitive landscape for India, when it comes to advanced packaging capabilities, where does India currently stand, especially when you compare it to what China brings to the table or Taiwan does? Where does India currently stand? Of course, the possibilities, like Mr. Chandak is pointing out, we're not taking away from that. We are going to get there. How quickly is going to be a question that is going to be asked over and over again. Currently, where are we at?
Yeah. So I think we are still behind. It's going to be a marathon, not a sprint for us. If you look at most of the fabs and OSAT which have come in or are coming in next 3 to 4 years are mostly, if you look at fabs, the front-end process are on the matured nodes. So they're not advanced nodes. And in terms of packaging as well, we don't have the leading packaging foundries yet, like ASE or TSMC or Amcor. So what we are going to get is mostly for matured nodes or the chips which are not advanced enough, but that is a great starting point. There are multiple projects, so we have to start somewhere. And because if you look at advanced packaging, there are just 3 or 4 players in the world, and they are coming out of either US or Taiwan or Korea, right? So it is going to be difficult to attract them right away if we don't have the infrastructure right now. So I think baby steps for us at this point. At least we can salvage whatever we can in terms of the domestic consumption and also build for not only for India but also for the world. It could be mature nodes to start with, but that is where we have to start.
So make for India and make for the world. Mr. Pant, what is it going to take by way of the incentive push, the PLIs that have been introduced, but all of it, of course, comes at a cost. So are the costs, the economic costs that come with offering the incentives, with offering these schemes, are they going to be justified by the kind of exports that this could actually propel India into that league that Mr. Chandak is indicating?
Well, Vikram, if I just look at the export value and PLI, I'll be doing an injustice. So one has to look at it. We have to look at the first net exports. But what it does is it gives it's an employment generator for the economy. So in order to the cost benefit, you have to see how much employment it has provided. Has it provided the employment to 10,000 people, 20,000 people? What kind of wages they have earned, and the kind of multiplier impact to the economy through the consumption multiplier it has given. Now, unfortunately, that cost benefit can't be done in a short span of time. One has to look at it, how many people have been employed. But yes, as I said in the beginning, it's a good beginning. We can find out more ways. How can we have our policy designed in such a way that will continue to attract investments? And at a time when our currency is under pressure, because from the equity side we are seeing the outflow, can we have a sustained FDI inflow so that our currency also get a breather and economy get strength? Right. So I look at these numbers rather than just looking at we have given 20,000 crore PLI and we have exported 40,000 crore. Sure. That will be incorrect comparison according to me.
Sure, fair enough. And those are valid points from an economist perspective. But Mr. Chandak, when you're talking about investments, and yes, Mr. Pant was talking about, FDIs. When you see these investments, Tata Intel or Micron and Foxconn, is it kind of talking about maturity of our ecosystem, or do you still think it's early stage optimism as we see it right now? It's about what can be expected in the future, or is there this maturity that's actually happening when you see the kind of investments that we see in the headlines today?
See, my view is the investments were happening in a bits and pieces. Recently, in addition to the companies, what you referred the names, you look at, there was an announcement by Microsoft, there was an announcement by Amazon, there is an announcement by NVIDIA to expand in India. So you'll start counting all these technology companies in addition to semiconductors. And some of those investments of Microsoft, Amazon, data centers, others, that is also going to impact the semiconductor sector actually. We are looking at the pipeline of almost like $100 billion plus. It's a big number. And I've done my calculation before I put those numbers here actually. So this is not just the one-off situation or episode, as I mentioned. This is really big stuff. I want to tell you one more point. I'm sitting right now in Japan for a Semicon Japan event. We had a meeting with several companies. We had Indo-Japan Forum. And there is so much of an interest from the Japanese companies also, and a trust to come to India and work together with the Indian counterpart to be part of our expansion story of the semiconductor sector in the country and be part of that as a partner. So there is a lot of interest globally from multiple countries, and this is going to go further up actually. So my view is, if I had to put in a nutshell, what we see today is a result of a deliberate and a very strategic policy. There is an industry alignment and execution. And India is not just a manufacturing more right now. We are doing much more smarter, deeper, with a higher value addition. And that is what will going to define the next decade. And design we are not missing. I already mentioned design and research is going to be core of this to make a sustainable thing. And that is also progressing actually.
So what India is actually bringing to the table for many of these companies, Neil, who are looking for a manufacturing hub that is sustainable for the future, where their future needs of growth and scale are met without any kind of question mark on it. How much of that is India providing right now? Because you're talking about these ATMPs, you're talking about Pro and Pro Max, all of these mobile phones that would be entirely manufactured out of India. So the capabilities at this stage, how do they stand out in terms of the larger picture and the manufacturing that we have right now?
Right. So I think from manufacturing perspective, I think we have done well. 99% of the smartphones are assembled at the completely knockdown level. So there are SMT machines which are actually putting out components on the PCB. Obviously, the high value components are still being imported because we don't have fabs to produce our advanced chips for the Pro and Pro Max, whether it's memory or the SoC, system on chip, basically, right? But the one thing which we should also highlight is, if Intel or NVIDIA or AMD, if they are, or Qualcomm or MediaTek, if they are designing a chip, most of the design is also happening in India. So if you would be surprised that some of the largest R&D centers for all of these fabulous chip design companies are actually in India. So we are actually already adding value when it comes to designing chips. Only thing is, we don't have the IP locally, indigenous IP, but we are already having a workforce which is designing chips, supporting for the chips, even like companies like equipment manufacturers for the fabs like Applied Materials, Lam Research, and others already have big R&D team and support team here. So they are already adding value. So if you look at from economic value addition, it is still happening, because if you take any chip, 40 to 50% of the cost is actually the software. Other is manufacturing, which is done at TSMC or other such foundries. So if we don't have still TSMC, but we are still indirectly value addition, we are adding value to overall industry, right? So actually, we are too much focused on hardware manufacturing at this point, but we should also look at what is happening on design R&D side, as Mr. Chandak said.
Yes,
only
indeed.
thing is basically we need to build our own indigenous IP, and that is where Mr. Ashok was referring to, that there's multiple programs to have homegrown Qualcomms, homegrown NVIDIAs of the world.
Correct. So these homegrown NVIDIAs, they may take their time to come. But Mr. Pant, what happens in the meantime? Because the tariff pressure, we're looking at the possibility of a deal between India and the US at this stage. These FTAs are going to be an important piece for us to push our export agenda. How important is that going to be? Can we have this kind of export growth of smartphones where we make them entirely out of India, not just assembling them? Can we have that despite, FTAs, because there could be political compulsions at work as well, if they do or don't happen, can the export push still take place?
Yeah, Vikram, I believe so. And I'll give you two examples. And Mr. Chandak and Neil will know more than me because they are from the same this field. Go back to 1980s, because you can see with my gray hairs that I belong to that generation. When the screwdriver technology came and the PCs were being assembled in India.
Yes.
So you had everything coming from Taiwan or other places. Mr. Chandak can correct me if I'm naming the wrong country. And they used to be assembled in India. Slowly we move up the value chain and we started having the PCs and laptops, etc., in the country. The second example I'll give you, when the outsourcing boom started, we started with the call center. It was mainly the call centers which were providing those services, but now we have moved up the value chain. So I see this movement also going in the same direction, provided we give government support in the form of policies, conducive policies, which attracts investments.
Yes.
Now your particular question on FTA and this, look, Vikram, FTA is a very long drawn process, and it has meant to very pros and cons, give and take. Say India walked out of WTO way back in 80s because farmers' interests were paramount and food subsidy was non-negotiable.
True.
One of the major reasons why the RCEP didn't become part of the RCEP, because the dairy was the main bone of contention.
Yes.
Dairy is one commodity in agriculture. Many people will not know.
Yes.
If you look at the individual commodity, it contributes maximum to the gross value addition of the agriculture sector.
Yes.
Even individual rice or individual wheat. It is the only commodity which gives you regular income.
Correct.
Crop will give you after a couple of months. This will give you regular income. So there will be a lot of negotiation, give and take, and whenever there is the FTA, it is not that
yes,
one country will gain everything and one country will lose anything,
right.
Everything.
So
there will be some gainer and loser.
Yes,
so
some will gain, some will lose,
continue.
and that entire process will take its time. But in the meantime, we can expect this kind of growth momentum in our exports to continue because we bring value to the table, and that value is growing over a period of time with the incentives, with the kind of push that we are getting from the policy side, and indeed how investments are coming through as well, like Mr. Chandak is pointing out, and then there is all that R&D effort that's also working. So what seems to be true right now is that India's iPhone story is no longer just about assembly lines. It's about where India fits in the global supply chain of the future. So the exports are rising, the ecosystem is expanding, and the ambition is clearly moving up the value curve. But whether this truly dents China's dominance is going to depend on how quickly India can scale up our technology, our talent, and indeed the kind of trust that companies have. Ashok Chandak, Devendra Kumar Pant, Neil Shah, thank you very much for your sharp insights tonight. And that's where we wrap it up here on this edition of The Big Question. The questions keep coming up, and we're here to find the answers. Thanks indeed for joining us this evening. From me, Vikram Oza, and the team, good evening.